Good afternoon, Nanda. Very good afternoon, Nanda. Welcome to APC Online Navratri series. Here we have with us Dr. Anupama Koneru ma'am. She is the principal of Sultanul Ulum College of Pharmacy from Hyderabad, Telangana. She is a gold medalist and renowned teacher, scientist, and she has very high research credentials, and now she is going to talk in this APC Online Navratri series on the topic research methodology. And today we have, this is the fourth day of our session. Already we have completed 3 sessions of Navratri series on the occasion of National Pharmacovigilance Week and World Pharmacist Day, and also the 75 years Diamond Jubilee of the Pharmacy Act 19. Here we have 9 incarnations of Durga, now Durga, and we are worshipping Durga in different incarnations on every day of Navratri series. And in the sense, we have chosen 9 eminent teachers, industrial people, to deliver different topics, lectures on different topics for the enrichment of knowledge of pharmacy students and teachers, young teachers. So in this way, today we have the 4th day, and we are having the lecture by Dr. Anupama Koneru ma'am on this Navratri series. Welcome you all, first of all, and as usual, we have the same pattern, slide of 9 different eminent speakers, and the executive director who is behind the screen of all these activities. I thank the management of Alwar Pharmacy College for providing such opportunities to bring these eminent speakers in front of. Thank you, and welcome to Alwar Pharmacy College. Now we have a small prayer, and we'll move on to next.
Shubham kurutvam kalyanam arogyam dhana sampadah. Shubham kurutvam kalyanam arogyam dhana sampadah. Shatru buddhi vinashaya deepajyotir namostute. Deepajyotir namostute. Shubham kurutvam kalyanam arogyam dhana sampadah. Shubham kurutvam kalyanam arogyam dhana sampadah.
I have a small introduction about Dr. Anupama Koneru ma'am. Dr. Anupama is a gold medalist in B.Pharm from JSS College of Pharmacy, Mysore, JSS College and JSS University. She has completed her Masters of Pharmacology from Andhra University and doctorate from Jawaharlal Nehru Technological University, Hyderabad. She has more than 24 years of teaching experience, published 40 papers in various national and international journals, filed 4 patents, and presented several papers in national and international conferences, and received grants from AICTE, Ministry of Education, Government of India. She also received many awards in various scientific forums, namely Best Post Presentation in Epticon, All India Best PowerPoint Presentation by a Pharmacy Teacher. Like, she is a member of a Syllabus Committee of Pharmacy Council of India and EC member of IPA Telangana State Branch. She is a life member in Indian Pharmaceutical Congress, Indian Pharmacological Society, Association of Pharmaceutical Teachers of India, KSPO, or Association of Community Pharmacists of India, and member of ISPO. So with these credentials, ma'am is presently serving as the principal of Sultan Ulum College of Pharmacy in Hyderabad, Telangana. We welcome Dr. Anupama Paneer ma'am to deliver her presentation. I start my presentation here, ma'am.
Thank you so much, sir, for that introduction and also giving me this opportunity. And it's wonderful that you got this idea of matching Navratri and calling 9 women pharmacists. We could do something in our field over the last several years. And now we have so many girls in our pharmacy colleges, in all our colleges, and you are taught to stimulate them to do research or to do something in the field of pharmacy is a very good idea. I hope your students will take up this opportunity, and I really congratulate all your students for having a principal who is the first thing when I asked you, you said, what is the purpose of this conference, the webinar? You said, I want somebody to encourage our students, others also from outside, and successful, whatever success we have reached, but successful women guiding our girl students is what you are looking for, and really commendable, sir. Today, my topic I chose as research methodology and overview, because if all of us, I mean, any one of us can do research, we all do research throughout our, like if I'm trying to go take a bus, find a route from this place to next place, what are the modes of transport? That is also a research. But what we think is research is somebody else's forte and we can't do anything in research. So after this session gets over, if I can stimulate 10% of the audience to do some research, get some publications in the next 1 year, I'll be glad that I've served the purpose. So I would like to share my presentation. So I hope you all can see this.
Please make it as explanation.
Okay. So I thank the management of Alwar Pharmacy College also for giving me this opportunity. And this institution itself is run by a society which named itself All India Society for Advanced Education and Research. So we can understand the vision of the management also. It's not just they're happy with just the education, but they also want their staff and students to do the research. So the topic is research methodology. We normally use it as a misnomer, research and research methodology, but these are two different things. How are they different? Research is an endeavor to discover answers to intellectual and practical problems through the application of scientific method. There are various ways of defining what research is. So what is the scope of a research? It will help in a decision making. Research is not confined to chemistry labs. First, that perception, we have to bring it out. It is not confined to any lab. Anything we are trying to find a new discovery or usage of the existing things for facilitating to human existence. That is anything that is leading to any such activities are called as, or there's a scope for all that such kinds of research, whether it could be how to economically use our resources, or help funding, project identification. All these are the way the research is done. It solves investment problems, solves pricing problems. So this is, we are going to, when research is in the management side, it is not confined only to sciences. Research is never confined only to sciences. So on the management side, art side, if you are trying to do a historical research. So research is anything we are trying to explore for the answers, what we always have the questions. So what are the different types of research? They can be descriptive, or analytical research. Descriptive is we are just finding a fact and describing it, whether it's an individual characteristics of an individual situation or a group. Analytical is when you are testing a hypothesis, when you are using, if you are measuring your results are expressed in the form of any measurable quantum, then it is called as analytical research. And then applied versus fundamental research. Applied research is when you are using it for a real life problem. Whatever you are finding out is used for a real life problem. But fundamental research is known as a basic or pure research. You will synthesize a new chemical. That new chemical is a fundamental research. But when you are using it, that new chemical for something, maybe you use that chemical as a solvent, you use that chemical as a medicine, all this becomes applied research. Just simple synthesis becomes a fundamental research. Then we have again a different types, ways of giving our research details, whether quantitative or qualitative. So if you see these terms, there are only, we are defining research like in a multiple ways. So the idea of this topic is that we all should do when we are there in this field of pharmacy. How a faculty is different from other faculty members. There are 25 to 30 faculty in each institution and many more in some institutions. So how is this one faculty going to be different from other faculty? Is it enough for us if we just come, take our classes and go, I'll teach our subject and our job is done? Then how are we going to progress? We are going to stagnate ourselves just like that without gaining knowledge over the period of years and without making that edge above our other faculty members. That is vis-a-vis faculty. But if you see students, there are 100 BPharm students. And then if you take the 3-4 MPharm branches, again, you will have 45 to 60 MPharm students. So how are these students each different from other students? Everybody gets a degree. So what is it that extra you can add academically in when you are studying, while you are studying, is where you can for that you should focus on how to do a research. And research is not something only somebody is there sitting in a bigger institutions or where they are flush with funds from the central government or state government. No, research can be done. It has to be started from a very small area. You don't have to be doing a big research that we are going to discover a drug for cancer today itself to one type of cancer. No. Start it somewhere where we will have our publication to write in our CV. Our CV should not be just like, I have BPharm, MPharm, PhD. If you have PhD degree, from where you got, what is the percentage? That's not sufficient. It has to be, once you are a teacher or when you are going for a job, also when you say that I've done, so I've got this publication. So it adds to your CV. At least for that, we have to look for research. And again, our mentality is our research is very boring. After 1 year, we will know that the result is wrong or the way we have done is wrong. Publication, if you write, they are getting rejected. Start somewhere and proceed so that you are going to make a mark for yourself and be little above than your contemporaries, whether it could be your fellow faculty members or fellow students. So there are different types of research. You can exploratory research, diagnostic research. So the list is being given, all these types I'm just mentioning, experimental or historical, all this is, there are so many ways, varied ways you can do, you can start a research. So that is about research. We should start something new. And because of the culture and the wide geographical character of our country, we are blessed to have that way. We have so many folklore medicines. You can start anywhere. And near Alwar itself, we have Sariska Tiger Reserve, Aravali Hills, which are home for the special species of plants which are not available anywhere in the country. So what can you do? Because of our diverse cultures, we have different kinds of medicines that are used. So take a small one, which is a folklore medicine, which is used by tribal people, and search for it if the scientific work is done or not. Start any small activity which can be done in your lab, or you can start writing review articles on these topics. So start it somewhere, start doing research somewhere, even if you are in a B farm or M farm, you have to do because of your project work, but especially the faculty members. So you also should start by publishing. It should be every year, one publication, it should be your target. So how research is different from research methodology? Research is, we have defined, it is finding a new concept or new use, anything, that finding. How do you find? How do you systematically find that new result is research methodology? What are the steps that are involved in doing a research is called as research methodology. So that's how the research and research methodology are different. This is the process. These are various steps that are involved in research is called as research methodology. So what does research methodology aim to do? To define research problem that leads to meaningful research that fulfills ethical considerations and useful to mankind. So any research that is harmful to mankind generally is not considered as research, but still, if we know that this thing is harmful, we may not use it. Or if we know that my research is something that is very harmful to mankind, then this will become a starting step for others to find out how to prevent the damage that is my research is going to cause, or I'm going to cause to the mankind. So that's why anything that is useful to mankind is supposed to be a good research problem. And if we don't follow this methodology, follow these steps, then there can be errors in the research. So the steps are important to minimize the errors and to select the sample that represents a population. If I want to do a hypertensive study, I can't start off with only studying them in 20 to 24-year-old. That's what I keep telling my students also when I'm teaching research methodology. If my sample, I want to do hypertension, right in front of me, there are 100 students. Can I do a hypertension study, anything related to hypertension in that group, other than finding anybody is there, how many even in this group are there? More than this, I cannot do any study about hypertension in that particular group. So selecting the right sample that represents the population also becomes an important issue. So in research methodology helps us to select the right sample that represents the population. And also when you follow systematic steps in doing your research, gives us reproducible data, and the statistical parameters will derive accurate conclusions. So these are the various steps involved in research methodology. When you start planning any research, the first step is defining a research problem, followed by literature review, and then formulating hypothesis. Then comes the designing the research, including sample design. What kind of research we actually will want to proceed? Is design research or research design? In that, how we choose a sample also becomes very important. Once we have decided what is the procedure, what is the format of research we will follow, then we can collect the data, that is executing our actual research, analyze the data, and interpret the data and report. So these are the steps involved in any research methodology. Today, if say in this entire group, if 5 people wants to do something new and really want to do some research, and believe me, you don't have to be in a central university or somewhere or in Manipal or in JSS to start our research at all. I mean, highly funded institutions. No, you can start your research. You can add to your CV from very basic steps. So the first one is research problem. The step 1, define research problem. What is a research problem? That means a question or issue to be examined. Research problem refers to some difficulty or need which a researcher experiences. So now if I want to start a research or any small project work, even for a lecturer, if they want to start a small project work, what to start? See, I'll give you one example. I also guide some of our project students, as because of the lack of time and the administration, I don't take much, but I do take few students every year, because these students actually teach me, or they help me learn what are the latest techniques, but I guide them to reach to that part, and then they come back teaching me. For example, like if I say, come on, go and get the seminar topic. First, we'll start with the seminar, and then comes the research project. So they'll say that we will do it and select one topic and come and say, they'll say Alzheimer's. So once they come, I'll ask them, what Alzheimer's? Okay, go get 5 publications in Alzheimer's. That's when they come back and say, there's a lot of work, it's already done on Alzheimer's. But still, is it the end of the road? No. Then I tell them, go and get something. You just go through those articles and then come down to a specific topic. Then they come back and said, one of them said accident and Alzheimer's. So my question to them was, is it Alzheimer's causing accidents, or accident due to some brain injury causing, or some stroke causing Alzheimer's? It's just when I was continuously talking to them on this topic, they were going back, referring, coming back to the material. That's when I realized that Alzheimer's can be a big issue because it's a slow and progressive disease. So in some accidents, Alzheimer's is one of the reasons. That is the early stages of Alzheimer's. Because what happens? The coordination, remembering, taking directions, this will slowly disappear. But what would an elderly think? That till yesterday I was driving. So you will be in a denial mode. So this is causing more accidents. So a progressive Alzheimer's. See, until the students came back and told, I always thought, whenever we talk about Alzheimer's and accidents, it's accidents causing Alzheimer's, but not Alzheimer's disease causing accidents. So when we start guiding our students, they will also help us learn new things and explore new things. So that's how even our knowledge will widen. It's not that if only our students do research, they will get benefited. No, we will also get benefited in turn. So each year, what I do is, whenever I get a set of project students, I'll try to make them do something very important, it's away from the normal, regular routine topics, so that it helps me also learn. Because there are 5 brains working already on a problem, and they tell us, read so much and tell us. So with this example, what I would like to say is, any topic you take, refine it, any research problem you take, just choose what interests you. Because this is you are in Rajasthan, most of these attendees are from Rajasthan. There are so many topics that you can do. What is happening with the health hazards in marble polishing or excavation of marble, polishing. There's so many studies that a pharmacy student can do without incurring much expenditure. So for that, a teacher also is required to help support and ignite that research kind of bent, and motivate students to do some research and publish. If I don't want to research, still we have an option of doing review articles and studying and publishing review articles. So in all this, the first step is define a research problem. I should not say, I just said research methodology and overview, or Alzheimer's accidents and Alzheimer's and leading to accidents, or Alzheimer's and accidents. But if I say accidents can be caused by Alzheimer's disease, because the title should be short and crisp, and the problem should be well defined. What exactly are you trying to? The title in one line should tell us what exactly is our aim in this study. So defining that problem, exactly what we want to do. I cannot say there are so many, person starts the moment we say survey, especially in pharmacology side. What we do is we simply say prescribing patterns of antibiotics, prescribing patterns of analgesics, prescription analysis. So that is such a wider term that it can include anything. But prescription analysis in cancer patients after chemotherapy, after radiation therapy. You specify So that is defining research problem. This is very, very important. Some articles we will see where the title will be so long that it will cover the half of the page. No, title should be self-explanatory or research problem and well-defined research problem. So the first step when we are seeing in research methodology, defining the research problem is very, very important. How we will actually, any topic you take, I mean, it's now after so many years of experience, even if somebody comes and says, I want to do something on ginger, we can just guide them, see ginger, what all is already done. So then still there will be so much to be there to do research in ginger. What is that is left out? When we start studying what is the research that is done on ginger, we will also know what is excluded and what we can still try on ginger. So that's how research, because we can't, when hundreds of students are there, 100 finally B.Pharm students are there, or M.Pharm students are there throughout the country, how much research? So we have to go in depth into one specific topic. So define the research problem, select and formulate the problem, and the research problem should be clear and unambiguous, not confusing. Then empirical. Empirical is there should be some experience or observation already that based on which we should start our research problem, and it can be verifiable. What it means is we cannot say water from the moon has this medicinal activities is going to be my research activity. Is it empirical or is it, can you verify it? No, it will be interesting, but availability of guidance, do we get the resources? So criteria for a good research problem is it should be very clear, empirical, verifiable, interesting, novel and original, and availability of guidance. That is very important. So if you want to have good ideas, first you should have many ideas, and then we should also know which one to throw away. Most of them will be wrong, and what you have to learn is which ones to throw away. So now coming to the next step. Once we know how to define our research problem, how do we proceed with our literature review? That is the second step. So when I say throw away certain ideas, you can throw away when you do a proper literature review. So it is a documentation of a comprehensive review of the published and unpublished work from secondary sources of data in the areas of specific interest to the researcher. So if they start doing on Alzheimer's, they'll start searching. Our major source now has become internet. So we like earlier, we don't have to run to several libraries. It's in our hand, only the information is now in our hand. So start searching, and then when they search the bibliography, again, you'll get some more publications related to that particular topic and can proceed. So it's an extensive survey of all available past studies relevant to the field of investigation, and also gives us a knowledge about what others have already found, so that we don't waste our time in the same subject. When if we have this in some biostatistics subjects in some courses, literature review itself is a big topic. That is, you can ask, you can get a major question in your question paper. So there's so much into literature review. So find the various data sources, find what are the various concepts, and learn how others have structured their reports. So sources of literature, we have books, journals, electronic databases, government and industry reports, because they will tell us this particular substance is banned, so you cannot use it. So we should not try again using them in humans without doing certain basic study. So that's why these reports also will become very important. They also give very important information. So what are the points when you are doing the reviewing the literature? Read relevant literature, read original works, not those fly-by-night operator journals, which are publishing everything, whatever they receive, by charging a certain amount and publishing. So refer the original works and read with comprehension. That is, understand, not just go through and flip through the pages. Read with comprehension and read in time and index the literature. Once we finish, what are the topics which we have already covered should be indexed, so that we don't be wasting our time and again on the similar topics or similar articles. So once the literature review is done, formulation of hypothesis. So what is the hypothesis? How was it? See, first is defining research problem. Then formulate certain hypothesis. Now we have come to the stage 3 in research methodology, that is formulating hypothesis. Now, what is hypothesis? It is about an assumption about relation between variables. What are variables? If you say age and weight, age and body weight, age and hypertension, both are, or age and body weight are all variables. So the relation between these variables is what is known as hypothesis. It is conjectured, means it is we are coming to a conclusion based on certain facts that are available, but not complete information. So hypothesis can be defined as a logically conjectured relationship between two or more variables expressed in the form of a testable statement. So if we give an example of age increases the body weight. So this is not complete information, but what we have been observing. So age will increase the body weight. That is in the adults, not when you're growing, it's automatically it will increase. But once a person becomes an adult also, still as you age, the body weight increases. So that is a hypothesis. So once you come from a problem is a relationship between age and weight. But hypothesis is when we are saying that it is going to be increased, then it is a hypothesis. So what happens? From a wider road, we are coming on to a definite path of how to proceed with this. So you will only check the age, body weight, and parameters associated with it, probably bone density. Where is it increasing? Is it water retention that is increasing, or fat mass, muscle mass? What is happening to muscle mass? That is, you're going in a particular path. That is the reason hypothesis statement is also very, very important in the stages of research. So what is a variable? Anything that can vary, can have differing or varying values. For example, age, production units, absenteeism, sex, motivation, income, height, weight, anything. Anything that can have different values. So the values can differ at various times in the same object or person at the same time for different objects or persons. Means the value, see, for example, blood pressure, blood pressure in a single individual can vary in the morning and in the evening. So there can be a diurnal variation. Some certain things can have a nocturnal variation, that is day and night. So the values can differ at various times for the same object or person at the same time for different objects or different persons. So a variable is a characteristic that takes on two or more values, whereas an attribute. Now, if you see variables and attributes, attributes is a specific value on a variable. You'll understand why we are talking about variables, attributes when you're talking about hypothesis in the coming slides. So the variable is sex or gender, has two attributes, male and female. So agreement has 5 attributes: strongly agree, agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree. So those characters is a specific value on a variable, is an attribute. And these variables can be explanatory versus extraneous variables, dependent versus independent variables. Explanatory is generally will find in chemical synthesis or in such, or you're producing some nanoparticles, etc. Any variable which we can control becomes an explanatory variable. Like temperature we can control, how we see, how do we mix, all these are explanatory variables. If you don't mix thoroughly, probably crystals don't form. Extraneous variables are something that cannot be controlled, but they will affect the dependent variables. For example, if my study is on body weight and hypertension, or age and hypertension. Age and hypertension are variables, explanatory variables. But what is extraneous variable is what is the person for whom I'm measuring blood pressure right now is actually thinking. Is he stressed, fought with somebody and came here while we are taking measurement, or is very happy while we are taking measurement, or is stressed about something, he has to rush to some other place. So what happens? These are the variables which are not under our control, but still maximum we have to try that variables don't affect our study, otherwise the results keep changing. So now coming to why we talked so much about variables. Research hypothesis is a predictive statement that relates an independent variable to a dependent variable. This is very important. In any research, at least one independent variable and one dependent variable should be there. For example, if you are doing some suited studies, say changing the polymers and then the kind of sustained release what we are finding, or any substance which is going to be, if you are using some patches, how it is going to affect. There are two things, a dependent, minimum two things, dependent variable, increase the quantity or change the composition of the polymers and see the result. So there should be minimum one independent variable and one dependent variable. If we are doing any review article or we are doing any qualitative research, then we'll say, suppose if you are talking about number of birds in this area, different species of birds in this area. So what is helping compared to, say, your Aravalli Hills, what are the in the city and in the Aravalli Hills? So what is causing them? So there should be different kinds of species, number should be there, one variable, and the environment in the city and in Aravalli Hills. So what we are seeing is two variables are compulsory, should be there in a study. So hypotheses are tentative, intelligent guesses. We are only guessing this pollution is reducing the number of species of birds in this area, whereas the different kinds of plants that are available are giving it an environment that it is protecting more number of species. That's a general hypothesis. It's a guess. From this guess, how we are going to go further is what the research methodology will lead us to. So what is the difference between a problem and hypothesis? Hypothesis is an assumption that can be tested and can be proved to be right or wrong. Okay, we can say accidents can cause, Alzheimer's can cause, increase the chances of accidents, or it cannot cause. But a problem is a broad question which cannot be directly tested. A problem can be scientifically investigated after converting it into a form of hypothesis. So sources, most of the literature review, what we see. Besides that, also discussing with colleagues or experts who are working on this similar problem will help us to narrow down our hypothesis. Types of hypothesis, again, descriptive hypothesis. These are assumptions that describe the characters of a variable. Public enterprises are more amenable for centralized planning. This is one example where we just describe. Whereas relational hypotheses are between two variables, what is the relation? And this can be a causal hypothesis. We are saying that first variable will affect the second variable. Now, based on that, what we hear normally null hypothesis is this. When a hypothesis is stated negatively, it is called null hypothesis. Anybody who has done little research, little thing to, or you have studied some articles, you'll always come in statistics, you'll come across null hypothesis. Means we start our statement saying that there is no difference or no relationship. So even we are doing, if you read the literature, once it comes to statistical parameters, it says t-test is significant, t-test is not significant. Means these are the parameters that are measuring whether there is, but what we see is, we just see the publications, or when you put the data in statistical software, it gives the results, whether t-test is significant or not, ANOVA is complied or not, there is variation between tests or not. So for all to understand that, we have to understand what null hypothesis is. That is, any experiment, any research is started, any statistical problem is started with an assumption, with the hypothesis that there is no difference or no relationship. That is called as null hypothesis. And if null hypothesis is rejected, that means there is difference. For example, there is no relationship between a family's income and expenditure on recreation. That means expenditure on recreation is not necessary. We are going to an amusement park, spending there, or we are going to a multiplex and spending there. Recreation, if you define well, recreation is how the family is enjoying itself. So it can be going to a smaller park and enjoying there. So the hypothesis is there is no relationship between family's income and expenditure on recreation. But if you see, if that is rejected, accepted, it is called as alternate hypothesis. There is a definite relationship between family's income. So finally, probably we might end up in our study saying that if they are extremely poor, the whole day they are spending only make to ends meet. So there is a relationship between family's income and expenditure on recreation, isn't it? So that is null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis. If one is rejected, the other is accepted. So that is about the hypothesis, what we are talking about. So it gives a definite point to the investigation. It determines the data needs. So when we are trying to do, suppose if somebody wants to do a survey on in a smaller area, say of 100 houses, how many of them, just a population data, how we are in that 100 families, how many are there in a particular age group? In that age group, what are the diseases that are commonly seen? So in general population studies, if you are doing, there also the hypothesis is why you want to do that study. Is it you want to understand the age? If you want, I want to do a population study, take a demographic data, is your research problem. But if I want, in the hypothesis, once you come down to define the research problem and say the disease modalities in the population, then in the hypothesis, we'll say that a particular age group is mainly targeted and seen what are the different kinds of diseases. So hypothesis, age and diseases are not common, uncommon. This particular disease is common. That is what we are finally coming down to in hypothesis, specifying our direction of research. So we are done with defining research problem, literature review, and formulating hypothesis. Now the major portion is research design or designing research, including sample design. So there can be a descriptive research or an analytical research. As the name indicates, descriptive will describe, we will only give this particular disease is there and the extension, it's only going to be described. There is no correct measures that are given. That is only the values. In analytical, we will measure compared to a blank or compared to a healthy person, a disease condition. So when you are comparing in terms of numbers, it is called as analytical. If you are just describing this disease is there, this effect is seen, or then it is a descriptive study. So analytical studies are different types. So the first type of classifying the study designs is descriptive and analytical. What are descriptive studies? A case report, only one case of unusual findings if you're finding, and if you observe, it is a case report. If the first case of COVID, if it is seen, why the person is, breathing problems is happening, then it is first we will form a case report. Then forms a case series. Slowly multiple cases are seen similar. But it blew so fast, it became a population-based cases. That is a descriptive epidemiology. We are only describing. And then if you're talking about analytical surveys, then we'll see what is the oxygen, if oximeter reading, what is the lung capacity, how, so that is all becomes the analytical study. But when you are observing single and then few multiple cases and then the population. So these are all descriptive studies. So epidemiological is when it is used, the studies are used for the public health. So study of distribution and determinants of health related states. See, mind you, in all these cases, we are only talking about clinical studies. That is what is happening in set of human beings. Or in epidemiological studies, we can also study what is happening in animals. But your descriptive studies, we hardly get in any chemical research, etc. That almost it has to be linked to, descriptive studies must be linked to generally animals or human beings. So it all depends on if the other way of classifying is you are only doing experimental studies or observational studies. So experimental studies are when there is any intervention. Intervention is we are trying to change the temperature to find how the crystals are formed, or give a drug and see what is the result. So these are experimental studies. When there is any kind of intervention, or we are interfering in the study by giving a drug, by changing temperatures, by changing chemicals, by changing the polymers, any kind of subject you take, when you are interfering, not just observing, then it is it's called as the experimental study. So the on top is, did researcher assign exposure? Means if the researcher has given any exposure, means assigned some exposure, something in the study, then it is experimental study. If there is no intervention, we are only observing, then it becomes an observational study. For example, if you want to see the ducks are going in a river, how are they moving? How many times they are making sounds? There, if you are counting the number, it is analytical study. If you see here, is there observational study? There is no exposure. When we are not interfering, it is an observational study. If there is a comparison group, that is, we are measuring between the standard and sample, standard and blank, or sample and blank, or two test doses, then it becomes the analytical study. But if you're not giving anything, interfering, then it becomes an experiment. If you're interfering, it is experimental study. Non-interfering, but just measuring that how many ducks are making noise. We are not going to interfere with anything. That becomes analytical study. Do ducks make noise while swimming? What kind of noise they make? Then it becomes a descriptive study. So if an exposure is given in the study by the investigator, it is experimental study. If it is just observed, it is an observational study. So in an analytical study, if there are two things, there is an exposure and there is an outcome. Means there is something happened for which there is a disease is resulted. For example, in areas where fluorine is high in water, fluorosis will be seen. So exposure is exposure to fluorine. Outcome is fluorosis. So exposure, the direction of exposure to outcome or outcome to exposure is what we commonly hear as cohort study. Cohort study is exposure to outcome. Some exposure has already happened and we are seeing the outcome. In certain cases, outcome is seen, outcome starts and then we start studying where the exposure is. So if there is an atomic bomb blast, what happened after that? If you are studying to see, like in Japan, even the third generation, there are still some genetic modifications happening. This becomes a cohort study. Case control studies, suddenly we have seen a new species, a new kind of disease in American with ancestral roots to Japan. So a Japanese American, if you are studying, what will be seen is the outcome will be measured in 2 generations back was their exposure to the nuclear material. So outcome to exposure becomes the case control study. Cohort study, case control study, and a cross-sectional study. Cross-sectional is you are seeing exposure, like all the studies what are done during COVID times are cross-sectional observational studies. That is, you are seeing exposure is happening today also, and it has happened in the past in certain cases. So we are seeing outcome now, outcome in future. So mixed, both exposure and outcome having appearing in the same time. This part, this is cohort, case control and cross-sectional studies are exclusive for clinical trials. These are not for any other studies like pure pharmaceutics or pure analytical studies. We are not using these at all. This is exclusively for our animal studies and also discrete epidemiological studies, purely mainly for clinical studies. We are performing any clinical studies or part of clinical studies. Now, why do we need to learn even these kind of studies? Because for pharmacy students, there are more options in the industry, in the area of say whatever literature you are studying or quality assurances. In that, where you have to, any new drug, you have to also go for to understand these studies, which one to be used. So that's why this knowledge is compulsory for any pharmacy student, how you are going to do any of these studies. More so for MPharm pharmacology students, when your major work will be or major job placements are towards the research side only. Research or RA positions, in all this, we have to know how to conduct this study. So experimental studies are either randomized controlled clinical trials. When we say randomized studies, they are generally for clinical trials. In other cases, we don't have to do clinical randomization then the observation studies anyway we have. Let us see what are the different types again. So cross-section study, when we start, that surveys exposures and disease states at a single point. That means we are doing, the study starts here, but we are trying to find what is happening exactly at this point of time, which will include both the exposure outcome happening at the same time. So whether there is a disease, whether the factor exposure is there or not, when we are seeing both at the same time, it is cross-sectional design. Generally, community surveys are all cross-sectional, but this is very expensive and this is not for rare cases. We can do cross-sectional studies for the most common diseases. The weakest observational design, the sequence of exposure and effect may be difficult. Exactly when the exposure has happened, when the outcome is seen. Case control studies are observational design comparing exposures in disease cases versus healthy controls from the same population. So this is more like a retrospective study. We go back and see there is a disease already there here in certain people. We go back and see the exposure. What kind of exposure? Suppose we see a lot of hypertensive people in certain area. Then we will see what is their lifestyle. See, suppose if you're considering persons living in a metro city compared to a rural living. So what is happening? There's a lot of stress, etc., pollution, everything will have add to their. So what we are seeing is retrospective. Today we compare and then see what are the exposures, for how long he is under stress, how long he is exposed to the pollution, etc. So that is case control study. We are observing the outcome now, that is going back and seeing what is the exposure. So study begins here but goes back in time. Now the other term which we commonly come across is a cohort study. Again, this is an observational study, but normally cohort studies are generally a prospective study. Today there is exposure, what will happen? Let us observe what is going to happen for next 5 months, whether this exposure is causing or any kind of treatment is, any kind of disease, it's slowly the disease is going off, or how things are going to be changed. So cohort studies are exposure to outcome. So time frame of the study, if we are doing the study prospective, looking forward, it is prospective study. Looking backward, it is retrospective study. So most of the times it is a prospective study. Very few cases cohort studies are retrospective studies to look back in time to study events that have already occurred. So if you are choosing a small survey study, finding out what is happening in the marble polishing fraternity or those who are exposed, not necessarily that I sit and polish, but if I'm doing some marketing sitting in that area only, also I'll be exposed. So here there are three ways you can do observational study. One is you're going to find out, now you tell them you take these precautions and you observe them for next 6 months as part of your project work. How your care, your pharmaceutical care as a pharmacist help them to improve their health, or it didn't make any difference. So this is a cohort study, selecting a group and going forward and checking. After certain changes you give them, measures you give them to take precautions. Next, there can be a case control study. You have already seen certain diseases and try to see for how many hours they're exposed, and also compare with others who have similar disease but they are not exposed. So when you compare with these two, it becomes a analytical study, but at the same time an observational analytical study. The cross-sectional study is you are studying all of them who are working in marble polishing and seeing what has happened to them, what is happening to them. They're continuously getting exposure. Now you understood the difference between a cohort, case control, and the cross-sectional study. Cross-sectional, you have the exposure outcome happening at the same time. Cohort studies, you will give certain measures because there should be change from what is happening right now, and then see how things are progressing into future. Case control is take certain disease cases and observe backwards. These kinds of research are something that will help the mankind, help the people around you, and also, gives them good health. So once if they are healthy, the money will be saved not on health issues later, but they can better utilize their financial resources also. So these are very, very small research activities, certain topics that you can do, not spending much. Limitations of cohort studies, they're expensive and time consuming. From here, I have to see for next 6 months, next 3 months. So inefficient for rare diseases or diseases with long latency. Long latency is exposed today, but the thing is seen or the effect is seen later, and lost to follow up. You may not be able to gain access to the same person again for next 6 months. So these are about the observational studies. And now coming to experimental studies, lot of things can be controlled in an experimental setup, which is not possible in case of an observational study. And experimental studies, if they're randomized and done, these are called as gold standard studies. That is, nobody can question. But the disadvantage with experimental studies, they become expensive because a lot of investment happens in how we do the studies. When we say a randomized experimental design, generally it will be a clinical trial. Because we have to do randomization only in case of clinical trials, how we are taking these volunteers or patients into studies. Otherwise, generally experimental designs, commonly if we use the word, it can be any physics, chemistry, pharmaceutics studies also. But randomization is used generally only in clinical trials. And there are different types of randomization methods that are used. That itself becomes another topic. So how we do any study, how can we proceed in any research? Start with a case report, 1-2 cases are happening, and then do their animal study, lab study, then epidemiological studies. And from this hypothesis testing, see, that is knowledge from one individual to we end up in clinical trials. This is how a study design sequence happens. Otherwise, unless there are multiple cases, why would we spend time in doing a lot of research? This is how it will progress if it is clinical trials. Now, the other important part is the sampling. Now you have designed what you want to do research. So you will do, suppose if you are choosing something like a new plant, which is a rare plant which is not used, but the folklore is using for something. then you will see, you can directly observe this folklore people, how they are using, how the wound healing is happening with their, so that becomes an observational study. But you bring it to your lab, extract it, see the study in animals, few animals to see, then it becomes an experimental study, experimental and observational. In that observational, you can do a cohort study or cross-sectional study. So you understood. So you can start it anywhere. Please start it. And now the next topic, which is important in the experimental design, is sampling. Why we should do a sampling procedure? So what is the necessity for sampling? What is sampling? The process of learning about population on the basis of sample drawn from it. So drawing the sample that represents the population is what is known as sampling. So as I said in the beginning, if I want to do some study on hypertension, what is the prevalence of hypertension in Hyderabad? Suppose if I'm trying to do that, if I do just because my students are there right in front of me, they don't represent the correct population of Hyderabad, because this is a certain age, 99.9% they will be healthy young adults. So, but this is, it's a wrong sample. So the study itself will fail. The first question will come on, the sampling procedure is wrong. The sample you have chosen for this particular study is wrong. So the sample, whatever we choose, should represent the population to which we are going to attribute. So if you say the plant extract taken from, say Ashoka tree extract we have taken, it depends on what stage of growth the Ashoka tree is. Is it a fully grown or a very old or a fresh one? Or again, it is in the, what kind of area it is there. It's a fully polluted area. Our sample should represent the population. When we are saying Ashoka bark is going to be used in this, it should be the sample what we are collecting should be a good one. So that is about sampling, why we should do sampling. So if you see, when we are generalizing, it's a theoretical, if you see here, it's a theoretical population. And what population we can get access to becomes the study population. So theoretical population is every person in Hyderabad. Study population is the few I will choose for maybe in a hospital setup or in a colony setup, with whom I have an access. That is a study population. Sampling frame is how can you get access to them. So if it is a colony, see if I just walk into a knock on any door and say I want to take, what happens? They'll say first they'll shut the door on our face. So you have to gain access this particular colony to that colony president, this particular apartments to their apartment president. So we are taking a population from a sampling frame from a colony, from an apartment, from a gated community, from a street. So these various samples that we are picking up are called as sampling frames. Finally, who we take in that sample, they should represent vertically above the entire population. So it is very essential that we do our sampling correct. And sampling methods are non-probability sampling and probability sampling. Probability is a more scientific way of doing the sampling. And the mixed is a combination of non-probability and probability. In that again, we have multiple types. Non-probability is judgment sampling. That is, suppose if I'm doing a clinical trial or we are choosing, trying to see what is the pollution in this area. So judgment sampling is just check in this area one time a measurement, or line from here till end of the city, I'll just travel and pick up. So that is the judgment sampling. We are just, okay, here I'll take a sample. Or when we are, some volunteers are taken into study. Anything just randomly done, first person into sample, second person into the test, then it is a judgment sample. We are not following anything at all. But quota sampling is when we are defining, say 30% of 100 patients in this study, I will involve 30% should be men, 30% should be women, and then 30% should be children, like that, adult men, adult women, children, like that. If you are dividing a quota, or some tribal people, rural people, city people, that is quota sampling. Convenience sampling is as and when they come, we take into the study, and that is called as convenience sampling. Snowball sampling is I'll have only 2-3 volunteers in my study, but that volunteer will bring other volunteers. So that is called a snowball sampling. So here there is no scientific method or methodology applied. Judgment becomes only purely on the judgmental, what the investigator perceives. But coming to probability sampling, simple random sampling, that is, we'll take a lottery, the first 5 or first 2 into test group, standard group. Like this, if you do some simple randomization, then it's called as simple random sampling. Stratified random sampling is we will divide first them into all male, all female volunteers, and then in that male volunteers, again we will do age groups. So we are branching them, stratifying them into different groups. Systematic is when we start doing certain studies, we will divide them into age groups, and then in age groups, say somebody with hypertension, somebody with normotensive, and then somebody with fluctuating blood pressures over 3 when you take the 3. So we are systematically categorizing into different groups. Then it becomes probability samplings. Cluster is make them firstly divide them off into groups, and then start each group you do certain tests. So that is called as cluster sampling. So probability sampling, in this sampling, it will slowly increase our expenditure, time and energy, but this will be more systematic, more scientific method of sampling. Then, and do we think that these so this is systematic means is that is not useful, non-probability? No. It depends on what kind of studies we are choosing. If we are doing some population studies, definitely non-probability sampling will be of better use. Mixed is a combination of these two. Multi-stage, initially we are doing an epidemiological study, and then we are doing a cohort study. So in different stages, you will follow different types of sampling. Multi-phase is if you take a clinical trial, you have already decided on which path to go. And then at different phases, we will follow different methods. So these are different types of sampling methods. So when we say the important stage after defining the problem, literature review, then hypothesis framing, designing experiments is we have to design what kind of experimental design we will follow. Are we going to do experimental or observational? In observational, it's going to be analytical or descriptive. If it is analytical, what are you going to do? Whether cohort, case control, or cross-sectional studies. The same thing in this observational studies, you can also do literature review also. Just observe what has happened in various publications. So in experimental, we again will see whether randomization should be done or not required. So non-randomized study or randomization study. So this is the experimental design, which is very, very important what you choose for your study. Then the next step, 5th step is collect the data. 6th is analyze this data. What statistical softwares you use. If it is kinetic studies, what kinetic softwares we use. So analyze the data, get the results, and interpret the data. So these are the 7 major steps in case of any research methodology. If you follow these procedures properly, we are going to get good result. Start with very small steps of taking part in any kind of research. But once we do the research, is it enough? If I do certain research and leave it and my colleague copies it, it becomes a copyright of my colleague, but not me. So remember, if it is not written down, it is not done. So what is important is write a report and get it published, which is very important. In that, what are the various steps involved is writing a title. Title should be self-explanatory, what it is going to be seen in the in your content. So, for example, there's so much, they register the titles also when they make the films. So why do they make it? The title should be attractive And then the title should be self-explanatory. Seeing the title, we will know whether it's going to be a comedy or it's a horror movie or it's a suspense. So that interest is created with the title. If I just simply write a long sentence, immediately they will jump to the next article. So the title should be self-explanatory and a very short as possible, and complete title. Short means don't just give some 2 words and leave it also. And then write the abstract, introduction or objective, background, literature review, methodology. So these are the various steps that should be there in our research report, and get it published. That is very, very important. Get your research published, and don't expect that unless there is fund, somebody gives me, I can't do research. Once you start doing it, it automatically falls in place. Our knowledge also, the horizon of knowledge will increase, and we will also know how many funding agencies are there. So this is what I wanted to share today. Start research, start publishing. Just the teaching fraternity, faculty members should keep it an aim as that every week one research article or one review article we will study comprehensively, not just flip through the pages, because this will help us learn better, understand things better. When our students come to us to do project works or anything, we'll be there, be able to guide them better with the topics and in the limited resources that are available to us. Not required at all to spend a huge amount of money, or we'll keep ending up asking, I asked my management, but they didn't give. Not required at all. Or my students cannot afford this study. What our students cannot afford, what our institution cannot afford, we don't have to do that kind of research, but start it somewhere. Keep an aim that there should be one publication per faculty. Now, I'm not exaggerating, but our faculty are in such competition, because once 5 faculty start publishing or 5 students start publishing, it becomes like, this is a big infection that spreads, and this infection always helps us and the institution where we are working, because it gives us, see, around 20 publications minimum come from our college. Now they've moved, because as they started gaining experience, they moved to only getting it published in UGC care journals. Otherwise, if UGC care journals, if they are not publishing, we don't count those publications at all when they're giving their publication. Yes, but you should start a publication in an easy journal. That's how our faculty have started. And seeing one after the other, they get stimulated. This is like that Laddi firecracker of Diwali. You ignite at one end, it will start cracking till the end. So now every student, they pass out also, they start. It's not only with PG students or PharmD students. PharmD students, they have an advantage of their clinical exposure. So they do publish almost, they start it off from 4th or 5th year. But it's the BPharm students also who wants to do, and seeing rest of them, because it's like a competition. And once they're there, so when I say from my college there are 20 publications coming every year, maybe not, maybe 50% of them are there in, say, with good impact factor journals, but there is an effort that has started, and it is continuing. So it gives a weightage to our institution where we are working also. So that's the reason, teachers, please make it a habit of reading one journal article, review or research, every one in a week. It will hardly take 1 hour. It's only that you can just do it, any research article or review article on your mobile, and start it. And of course, our student fraternity is there. You give them a topic, they will start writing. Only thing is, we need to push them in that direction. So I'm open to the questions or any doubts.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you all for your patience hearing. I don't know how long it took. Okay, 1.5 hours almost.
It is the matter subject that bound everything. I will make everyone ready
Yes,
to
sir.
ask. participants can unmute themselves. Now we can ask for any clarifications. Please, you may ask. Anyone wants to ask any questions, any doubt in this presentation, or any kind of
Faculty should push their students to publish. Students should push their faculty to guide them to publish. Whatever, it's going to be a win-win situation for all of us to add to our CV.
more questions. I think, are you able to unmute? Some of you, please try it. Try to unmute yourself. Somebody, some teachers can try unmuting themselves so that they are okay. Or put it in the chat box if you are. Things are there, ma'am, but is there to ask any questions? Thank you very much, ma'am, for your
Thank you, sir.
and very good presentation for just for the beginners. It is a very good introduction as to how to enter into the perfect research. And I thank you on behalf of Alwar Pharmacy College, all the faculties, management, students, and for taking your time and energy for presenting this topic in our Navratri series of APC Online, ma'am.
It's my pleasure, sir. It's my pleasure, sir, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. I thought when you're calling so many researchers, I wanted to target those who are not inclined to research or publications, because others will anyway get the experience from the other 8 speakers about how to go and do advanced level of research. But I hope the audience, please, next year, keep it a target to do something and publish in the coming 1 year cohort study. From here to, this is the exposure, there should be a positive outcome.
Definitely they will start, ma'am. We hope for the best. And we will move on to the next part, the national anthem now.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for your participation here. And please rise for the national anthem. Thank you.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, all of you. I will end up this session.